Okay, so it's 3 o'clock and we've got 8 chats already. What's going on? Hi, IK. Okay, John, Belinda, Mrs. Olene. Oh, Mrs. Olene, thank you very much. Okay.
Yes.
Right. I'm joining while in transit. Well done. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank
This is
you.
really good. This is really good. So we would like to welcome everyone. Thank you so much for everyone who showed up on time. We're grateful. Welcome to our knowledge sharing series. It's a weekly thing. And on behalf of myself and IK, would like to say a very big thank you to everyone who joined in on our 001, the first session. On that session, it was amazing. We talked about stress management, okay? Stress management in this, trying period. We looked at different techniques on how to manage stress during the lockdown. And of course, IK looked at staying relevant in the workplace, even in this lockdown and post-lockdown, because as we know, a lot of organizations are doing, cost-saving exercises, looking at how to cut costs here and there. So what makes, your job justifiable? What makes your job one to keep? So IK looked at one of the ways we can ensure that we stay relevant, and when, jobs are being cut, you're not significantly affected. So that was last week, and you can, of course, go to our YouTube channel. We are streaming live on YouTube, so please go there, like, share, and of course switch on the notification button so you get every notice that we post via our YouTube channel. So I'm going to pass it over to IK, who's going to tell us a little bit about what to expect today. You can see our beautiful hosts, our speakers, they are loaded, guns blazing. The arsenal is full up, so they're going to be releasing very soon. So IK, over to you.
All right, thank you guys. So welcome to a new week. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay, good. So today we are looking at the influence of HR on workplace health and safety compliance. And we have with us two HR professionals, very skilled, very experienced at what they do. And we're going to be looking at a UK perspective. So we have Jennifer from the UK, and then we have Toyin from Nigeria. So we're going to be looking at a UK perspective and also like an African or Sub-Saharan perspective of how HR has always influenced health and safety and what they intend to do. So the idea really is for us to, look at the similarities between both regions, look at the differences, and of course, see what we can take, even if it's just one thing, take something back to our workplaces that we can immediately implement. For us, we want the webinars to be impactful. We want them to, touch lives. We want you to actually take away actionable tips from the webinars. So, but before we go on, I need to quickly share with you our little agreements, an agreement that we all need to agree with, yeah? So we want everybody to stay mute, even the speakers. The rest of us, we go mute once one of the speakers is speaking. So we want everybody to stay mute. And if you have any comments, any thoughts, anything you want to add, feedback, please use the chat option. And then if you've got questions, we want you to use the Q&A section. So when it comes to Q&A, we will only be looking at the Q&A section for questions. So please make sure the questions go there. And it's really just for us to, for everything to go seamless and, stress-free and all that. And then very important, please don't share your personal details in the chat or in the Q&A. If you want to contact any of us directly, please feel free to send us an email. You have both our email addresses. Please don't share it publicly. Privacy of information, information security. You have to think of all that when you are on such a platform. And then, of course, this is a safe place, very safe. We want everybody to feel comfortable. We want everybody to feel happy, to feel safe here. So please keep it spam-free, yeah? And then, of course, welcome again. So thank you, guys, and see you later.
Thank you so much, IK, for the house rules, and I'm sure we will all observe this. I can already see hands popping. I don't know whether the question is about just the four of us looking so great, or because we haven't started the section yet. So please do raise your hands up. When it comes to the question and answer, we will take all your questions. So I'm going to bring on our first speaker. I'm going to do the honors to introduce this wonderful personality. Her name is Jennifer Arorade, and she is a qualified generalist, senior human resources practitioner with over 13 years of experience working directly and supporting senior leadership teams in the public sector and, of course, private sectors too. Jennifer is a member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, Personnel and Development Management, and of course holds a master's degree in business and business administration. So of course, Jennifer is our personality from the United Kingdom. She belongs to the Institute of Chartered Personnel Management, which is CIPD in the United Kingdom. And of course, when we do need to talk about the other speaker who will be bringing in the bringing in some information for us from the Sub-Saharan perspective, we'll hear more about her. So over to you, Jennifer. You go guns blazing. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for me. Hi guys, welcome and thank you for joining us. So my role here today is just to talk to you guys about the role that HR plays in line with supporting health and safety practices in the work environment. Going into this, I'm going to now share with you my screen, which is my PowerPoint presentations, and I'll just talk you through that and elaborate where the needs be. So. Okay, so can you all see my screen? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so as I said, is the influence of HR on the workplace health and safety compliance. So the first slide, I'm just going to go through just the basic legislations for us in the UK. So we have the Occupational Health and Safety Act 1993, and this states that employers are required to bring about and maintain, as far as reasonably practical, a work environment that is safe and without risk to the health of workers. However, employers are not solely responsible for health and safety. You know, health and safety is everybody's concern. Everybody in the workplace, you know, there are things you need to do to keep yourself safe, to keep your colleagues safe, and to also support management, keeping the work environment safe. So the Act is based on the principle that risks in the workplace must be addressed by communication and cooperation between workers and employer. This is where HR actually comes in and plays a role. HR as people, and you know, as the name says, we're human resources and we look after the human resources and support managers to support their people. We come into the communication piece where we make sure that link is not missing for the understanding for employers and employees. Okay, I'll move on to my next slide. So this is just a rough idea of the role of HR within an organization. So, you know, in a HR department over here, you have legal responsibilities as well as compliance, ensuring your organization is compliant to the relevant employment laws, legislations, regulations, and so forth. Employee relations, this just relates to any kind of employee matters you may have. We have a role to play there as well. We obviously look at pay and compensation, your remuneration, employee training and development, employee benefits and recruitment. I mean, the list can go on and on. I just picked out a few.
Jennifer, okay. Sorry, just before you move on, may I ask if you can just put yours into presentation slide so people can see it bigger, because it's in a smaller screen at the moment. If you go into presentation slide.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. It was like, well, I'm trying to do that. I'm sorry, I'm struggling. I'm clicking on it and it's not going.
Just click from current slide where you were before. If you go into current slide, no.
Yeah, I'm doing that. And I'm putting it on the slideshow.
And then click on current slide, the second tab from the left. Yeah. There we go. Thank
you. Thank you. Okay. So while HR professionals are not expected to understand all the technical aspects of OSH, that's occupational safety and health, they can play an important role in administrating, communicating, facilitating, and championing the process. Okay. So HR professionals must use their communication. Before I go into the skills we must use, one thing for me, I think it's a core requirement for HR practitioners, whatever position, be you an administrator, advisor, whatever position you are in HR, is that you do need to have communication skills. You need to know how to communicate with your workforce and various stakeholders. You need to know how to influence, and you need to know how to negotiate, because it's, you know, you're influencing decisions. You're not the decision makers, you're influencing the decisions the business is making. So you need to be able to influence those and negotiate and try and bring them on the side of best practice. While communicating the importance of occupational health and safety to management, not just from a legal perspective, but a business case perspective, HR also plays an important role in ensuring that employee concerns are heard and raised. Sort of things you would do around this would be, if you're working with health and safety, you would have things like maybe monthly meetings with a set, number of employees. You do things like maybe you would recruit an employee champion for health and safety. It could be trade union members, just people who would be able to bring forward what concerns your workforce have about health and safety. In addition to overseeing the policies and procedures and ensuring that employees adhere to these, HR's most important role is to ensure that every member of the organization, from top down, understands that OSH is everybody's responsibility. Okay. In larger organizations, health and safety, I'm so sorry, my screen is playing up a little bit. I'm having a load of stuff pop in and pop out. Really sorry about this. Okay, in large organizations, HR and health and safety are often two distinct functions or teams which work in close collaboration. For example, an initiative to address absence rates could require both health and safety. So this could be absences, well-being, whatever the issue is. So some employee issues that you need to address that would require health and safety and HR to work together. Health and safety would have to do assessments alongside HR to kind of obtain and deduce and understand the best way forward in these issues. This is how we support ourselves. However, in SMEs, which are small, medium enterprises, the roles are often combined, and you have one person with a responsibility of both, particularly in a typically lower risk office environment. There could be a lot to consider. So even if you're not aspiring to a career in health and safety, as a HR practitioner, having a broad understanding of the topic can make a real difference to people in your care. When HR is well versed, as HR practitioners, when we are well versed in health and safety legislation, it adds another layer of protection to the organization. So it's really good for us to take up training. For instance, if you're a HR person and you've got your health and safety department or any kind of health and safety training going on for the workforce, it's really good for you to try and get onto some of those trainings so you understand, from the H&S perspective, what they're dealing with and how they go about managing the issues they do, so you can support them better and communicate these to the workforce better, well versed. So HR and health and safety, like I say here, they're like two Venn diagrams, and our paths do really cross a lot because we are both concerned with people. Health and safety is to ensure people are safe. HR is to ensure that terms and conditions of employment are not abused, so to speak, for lack of a better word. So we're both focused on people. So our paths definitely do cross, and we do work together in collaboration. Let's get to slide for a moment. So I've just made some benefits of good H&S practice for organizations. So I've just got little bits on that here. So do organizations know their real legal responsibilities in terms of OSH and understand that there are penalties attached to non-compliance of the Act? They don't know the significant benefits. So health and safety compliance can have an extensive and highly positive impact on organizations. What I mean about this is that, which I think will come across in the next slide, is that where you have a healthier, safer working environment, you would have a more engaged workforce. When you have a workforce that is engaged, you have reduction in absences and you have more productivity because people are feeling valued, people are engaged, and they feel they're being listened to. Where you don't have engagement in a workforce, it can cause you various disruptions that leads to losses in your bottom line. So engagement of the workforce covers, health and safety and every other thing you should be doing as an employer for your workforce. So, the cost really, the cost that is involved in making sure you've got the understanding of health and safety practices within your environment and you have the right people in place to deliver these practices is really minimal if you look at the risks that are attached to not having it. This is in a UK context. If, if you have any issues with employee health and safety in your workforce, for instance, you have an employee who hurts themselves at work, depending on how serious that injury is, you know, you can end up in court. You know, if you have a death in the workplace, you'll be in court for corporate manslaughter. So it's really important, again, in the UK context, that we are applying and practicing, you know, applying best practice to health and safety module in the business. Okay, so these are some examples of the benefit of a healthy workforce that I just added here. As I said previously, you have increased engagement. This is when you have a healthy workforce, you know, safer place to be, people engaged. You have less sickness absences. This is not just sickness absences, this is any absences. You know, you have people call up for various reasons and avoid coming into the workplace, you know, if the engagement is not there. And you have, of course, increased productivity as well. You know, when your workforce is engaged, people turning up to work. And I'll explain where the savings comes in for you in this. And again, this is in a UK context. For instance, if you're an employer and, you know, you have people going off on long-term sick, dependent on the terms and conditions of employment. In fact, you know, most conditions of employment have an element in there for sick pay. So you can have an employee who's off long-term sick, for instance, you know, over 28 days, and you were paying that person to be off sick, yet still you need to grab an agency or temporary worker into your workforce to cover that job. So you're actually paying twice for a role. So for me, it's really, really, really necessary for you to ensure that the right and best practices are in place in your place of work, looking after your people. Because without your people, there's no delivery. You know, if you're running a business that you need human beings to work with, you've got to ensure their health and safety. You've got to ensure their well-being, because your people are your greatest assets, and you have to invest in them. You know, you may seem costly in the beginning, but you would pay a lot more in the end if you try to cut corners and not do things right. Okay, I have a quote here which I got from, it's by Fiona Patel, who's the head of HR for NEBOSH, which is the National Examination Board in Occupational Health and Safety for the UK. And she says, I quote, HR professionals involving themselves in health and safety is not only good for our organisation, it also supports personal development. I think that's my last slide in that. But the only thing I would just say on this before I move on is that if you're a HR practitioner in an organisation, and you have, for me, I'm fortunate that in my organisation we have a defined HR department and a health and safety department, and we have a very qualified chef manager who's in there. So I work with him and he knows everything, and he leads me through and sees me through his health and safety stuff with my minimal knowledge of health and safety. If you're in a position where you have the responsibility of health and safety under you, it is really wise, you know, though you don't need to know all the technicalities of it, you do need to have at least a statutory understanding of what health and safety is and what best practice in health and safety looks like. Well, that's my lot for you. I hope the information I've shared with you has been informative. I hope, you know, I've given you some nuggets here. However, you know, if you've got any questions for me at the end of this, please do feel free to ask, and I'll respond to you as best as I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was actually quite insightful. That was very, very informative. And I can bet you I'm taking notes, and I'm not even a HR person, but of course a HSC professional. And I hope that we have different people on here, particularly our HR guys on here, that would be able to take one or two on. But just to reiterate, you know, you said some quite key things. You know, people are your great assets. You know, they're the greatest asset any organization can have. So if an organization really is in the business of being in business, it needs to appreciate the people, its workforce, because it's human capital. That's the greatest value that organization can have. I mean, I've taken so much notes that, you know, there are direct and indirect costs, of course, to, you know, compliance. Do you see what I mean? Or lack of compliance, pardon me. So you don't comply from a HR perspective, you don't help, you don't partner with your HSC people to ensure compliance, you will still pay something in the long term, whether you like it or not. So you can either pay to fix things and put infrastructure right, or pay and, you know, like you rightly said, face, you know, corporate manslaughter, like criminal damages and what have you, you know. So that was quite good. Of course, again, that was from the UK. perspective. I'm going to pass it over to Ike, who's going to do the honors to introduce our next speaker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jennifer. That was really, really nice and insightful. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce Toyin. So we have Toyin Set Ogungbemi. She's a human resource business partner with over 11 years of experience of aligning business objectives with employees and management in designated business units. Her experience and association with people from various domains helps her to effectively manage people and their behavior. She's skilled at formulating partnerships across HR function so that she's able to deliver value-added services to management and employees. She's presently the head of talent management and corporate communications of Solina Center for International Development and Research. So over to you, Toyin. Thank you very much. Unmute.
Can everyone hear me now? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's exciting to be here. It's such a delight to meet such beautiful ladies doing great stuff in the world and making a difference. I feel very honored, and I thank all the participants for joining in as well. So I'll just quickly take us through my slides and hope that we have an engaging conversation. Okay. While I'm trying to share my screen, I'll just share a little story that formed part of who I am today and why I keep questioning and I keep pushing for process development. So while I was still about 3 years into my career, I worked in an organization where my role was borderline admin, HR, operations related, and we had a lot of on the field consultants, and we used to just we send them on the field, they execute short-term projects for us and bring back results and reports, and we pay them off. And so one day I was just thinking, and I was a little bit restless, and I thought, what if something happens to one of these consultants on the field? Who becomes responsible? Their family or the organization? And it hit me for the first time that the responsibility lies on both ends, much more on the organization. And that was where it hit me. Have we ever even thought of it? And then we had a conversation around it. We engaged.
Toyin, we can't hear you. Can you hear us? Because we've lost you now.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can. Yes, we can now.
Okay. I'm still trying to share my screen. I hope that that will be sorted soon.
Okay.
So, okay.
Please
so
try
I was
again. You should be able to share. Can you try again, please?
Now, let me try now.
Apologies about the technicalities.
Yeah, sincere apologies. Unable to share still.
Right. Do you want to send oh right, okay.
Okay, you know what? I've got the slides. Let me just give me a minute.
Yeah.
Give me a minute, yeah, please.
I was enjoying that story, Toyin, until you kind of
went.
I really like
so
that.
Please help me with what the story, what was the last bit you caught, so that
I caught the part on aside from being distracted with the back end and trying to answer Q&As and and comments, I caught the part that when you started your career, it's just really from there. That was really the part.
Okay. So I think I said the story up until the point where I started to get restless with the fact that we had about 100+ consultants on the field working at different times, howbeit short, but they represent us each time they're on the field across states, exposed to different dangers that we do not have control over. So the question now was sit down and discuss. What do we do to protect them as much as we can? How do we make ourselves as responsible for them as they are for us on their job description, howbeit for a short period of time. And that conversation alone was able to birth an insurance for them and several other conversations around how to safeguard them while they're on the field. And I know that several people can relate to such stories because we work, some people have to work in high-risk regions, and sometimes the concerns are, how responsible is my organization for me being here? I've put everything into it and I'm here representing the organization. How responsible is my organization for my well-being, for my safety while on the field, away from my loved ones, away from my family? And so for me, it's those kind of concerns that make me excited to be able to be part of this conversation, because it's an ongoing conversation. And I just want to pick a few things from Jennifer, who so eloquently gave us a solid background as to who a HR professional is, how you champion safety policies in your organization. I think that to give a background to this conversation while we're waiting for my slides to come up would be that my own aspect of the conversation aims to focus on occupational health and safety realities in Sub-Saharan Africa, case study Nigeria, considering that's where I've worked all my life. And one clear difference I can see from listening to Jennifer's narrative and mine or our reality in Nigeria would be that most or an average organization does not have an office designated for HR and another for HSC officers. There are a few exceptions, but the norm, which I am very familiar with, is most times the HR person doubles as the admin manager. In some cases, the operations person doubles as the HSC officer, and sometimes doubles as executive assistant to management in some cases. So I am actually speaking to people who have this type of background. What do you do when you are caught being this person who wears this many caps and you're responsible for the safety and well-being of, howbeit 2, 3, 10 people, as long as the person is a worker who works in the organization for at least 8 to 10 hours daily? Those are the kind of people that we are hoping to speak around today. Thank you very much, IQ, for bringing up my slides. We can move now. So I think to start the conversation, I'd be discussing first of all the impact of health and safety in the workplace, which fortunately for me, Jennifer has largely spoken to. So we can just move on to the basics to avoid being repetitive. If I can hear me, I'm ready to move on with the slides. Okay, next page, please. So the impact of health and safety compliance in the workplace is what I'm speaking to now. So one impact identified here is that it ensures the workplace is committed to overall employee well-being. And I decided to focus my dialogue on health beyond physical health, which is the common thing that comes to mind when we think health, and to focus on the mental wellness. I believe many HR professionals like myself have been particularly burdened and concerned with the mental well-being of their employee all through this COVID-19 lockdown, stay-at-home period. It's been difficult to manage. It's been, you're just thinking, are they well? Are they doing well? Are they mentally stable? Are they mentally drained? How is the effect of sitting at home? It speaks to how the overall well-being becomes the responsibility of the HR person most times, if not every time. So another impact is on the injuries and health and ill health caused by poor working conditions, which of course Jennifer has spoken to, so I'll not overemphasize that point as it has been dwelt on already. And it goes without saying that a happy and healthy employee is a more productive employee. Again, Jennifer had spoken to that. So we'll be moving quickly to what poses a challenge in the Nigerian reality that we have. So yes, health and safety is great, it's fantastic. We all agree. The well-being of the employee is important to every organization, we agree. So what are the things getting in the way of us getting to that point where we all align and agree that this is the best practice and this is what we should do? So I decided that I'll make this dialogue dwell a little bit on those realities using the Nigerian context in this scenario. We can move on, please, Okay, thank you very much. So of course, this is speaking to the challenges that we encounter in the course of practicing health and safety compliance in the workplace. So one, I said, is work pressure or deadlines. I know many people are smiling right now. If you work in a Nigerian organization, you know what it means when you have to work at midnight. You carry your work in your phone. You carry your laptops home. You get home, you open the laptops, and work continues. Sometimes this goes a long way to make people feel overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed, they keep going, they keep going. Then we start to see anger, irritability, withdrawal, and sometimes mental outbursts and instability in some of our employees. And again, this becomes our responsibility to fix. Or like Jennifer rightly said, we see a rise in sick leave requests. Suddenly, almost everyone is going on sick leave back to back. You know that there's a drain that has happened to people. And there's the issue of lack of corporate responsibility and accountability, and I'll speak to this. And I'd like to put out a disclaimer to just say that this is not me bad-mouthing what we have. This is me saying these are the realities that we face as HR professionals who are responsible for championing those processes in our organizations. And this is us having a conversation as to what we can do better, do differently, or what is already being done that we might be ignorant of. So yes, we have some corporations in Nigeria, multinationals, and they have laws that govern their processes in their parent organizations all over the world. But for some reason, when operating in Nigeria, they either conveniently forget those laws or try to override the processes because they can. And we know why they can. And so some unwholesome practices that may not be tolerated in their parent companies may be tolerated here. No one questions it because most times even the staff and the employee don't even know their rights in that sense. So there's the issue of the low educational level of the workforce. And this does not speak to the entire workforce, but I pick particular sectors that have a large number of workforce, howbeit they are usually labor intensive and they usually have mostly mid or poorly educated workforce. We have the agriculture sector, we have oil and gas, we have mining, and we have construction. And what does this do? It makes people unable to speak up because they're not even aware of their rights. They don't even know their rights, so they cannot speak up when there are challenges on the job. So they take a lot of things that are unideal and they just keep going. So there's the issue of unemployment, which goes without saying, is one of our biggest issues in Nigeria. It's at an all-time high. It's at an alarming rate. And it speaks to why sometimes people will stay in a toxic work environment that bears no concern for their health and safety or their well-being because they consider themselves even lucky to have a job, to have a take-home. So I'm lucky enough to have a job. Who am I to complain that they are not treating me well? Who am I to complain that it's toxic? Who am I to complain that it's affecting me? Yet you carry around the effects mentally, physically, but you cannot complain because, hey, I'm one of the lucky ones to even have a job to start with. So that in itself is a challenge. And most of the time it poses a risk to where we are headed as an organization. I mean, as a nation, should we want to really comply to our health and safety policies. We can move on, please. So there are more challenges, which I'll be speaking to shortly. Okay, so lack of adequate information and statistics. So now, not to just bore us with the long grammar, it's simply speaking to the fact that we don't have sufficient information. We're not even educated enough on what our rights are or what the policies are. So I made a joke while I was speaking with Fumi and Ike and Jennifer earlier. I said, while researching for this, I found a national policy, an updated document, a national policy on occupational health and safety. And I could bet it was the first time I was seeing it. So I'm sure there are HR people here today and they're thinking, oh, there's something like that. Yeah, so that's the problem. That gap where everyone is not at the same time aware of updates in laws, and that poses a challenge. I'll tell you how. If a good lawyer helps an employee get access to this information and you, the HR professional, have a gap not to have known that this law existed, your organization is at risk of being sued and losing. because ignorance is not an excuse in law. So that need to not just make information accessible, but also consistently disseminated in a way that everyone is abreast with what the updates are for us to look out for the employee and for the employee to look out for themselves. Corruption is a big deal in Nigeria, in Africa. And why is this a concern in health and safety? Simply because the Factories Act, for instance, clearly stipulates that the criteria that are meant to be met for a desired organization is XYZ. However, we have organizations who rose up and skipped all these XYZ rules and are existing and are giving their licenses to practice. Now, where the challenge is, years along the line, people's lives are at risk. They are there, they are working there, and the building crashes down. Who becomes liable at the end of the day? Who bears the risk? Who bears the cost? Who bears the loss? So there's a lot of concerns that go underneath that play a big role in the challenges we face in Nigeria. Another big one, which I'd spent some time on, is the cost of doing business in Nigeria. I'm hailing all the entrepreneurs here right now. It's not easy. I know that for sure because I've had the luxury of consulting for entrepreneurs, both small, both medium-sized, and both large. And I can see what goes into it. There's so much expected of you. You're responsible for your water. You're responsible for your light. Sometimes you're responsible for the road, making it motorable enough for people to be able to access your business place. So the last thing you feel like thinking about is being mindful of the health and safety policies of employees. In fact, you feel like you're doing them a favor, or in some cases, you can barely even afford to pay them their salaries. How much more considering the cost of managing their health and safety while at the work? So you make that their responsibility. These are actual realities. And of course, it goes without saying that there's the weak national occupational health and safety standard we have as a people. It is pretty weak, and that's why even when there are updates to the policies, it is not disseminated appropriately. We do not all hear, we do not all know, so that we can do better. So there is a need for all these challenges to continue to be brought to the fore, so that we say it, we fix it, and we get better. And then we know that we are measuring ourselves with best practice all over the world, which I hope and pray is where we are going in a short time from now. We can move on, please. Okay, so we're quickly moving on to the role that HR has to play in ensuring health and safety compliance in any firm. And please, I'd like to say again that the HR in this case can be an admin manager, can be an admin officer. It can be called many names because many people wear those caps and they're responsible for championing, breathing and championing policies across their organization, varying organizations of different sizes. I think one good place to start is to make your organization communication friendly, where people can easily and openly discuss their concerns. I often say that HR is not all-knowing. While so much responsibility rests on our shoulders, particularly in the Nigerian organization structure, a lot rests on our shoulders, no doubt. But the question is there a point you reach where you know you don't know everything? Absolutely. So sometimes an employee, a regular employee, may just be the one to identify a health and safety risk or gap, and you would need to pay attention and you would need to quickly react to that, sometimes proactively or reactively, depending on which time you got the information. So that need for communication to be a thing where everyone can just approach HR and bring their problems and bring their concerns or fears is a good thing. And of course, there's the need for proper monitoring of a safety program. So yes, now you're the HR person, you've been able to midwife a safety program in your organization. Check, excellent. But now the next question is, are you monitoring that there's compliance to it? Are you monitoring updates on what you have recommended? So much so when there are changes in the nation, you are updating in your organization. Are you adopting wellness initiatives? Do you have an incident reporting process? Do you have an accident book? The only reason I can show off with all the words I just used is me being thankful for my friend Prof. Ike, who is one of the hosts, who has been educating me, and she has been very helpful. And what does that speak to? It speaks to the need for you to keep learning as a HR person. There's no cap to learn. There's no point you reach and you say, oh, I'm that good. To promote the well-being of staff, to be a part of making their lives better, you have to consistently admit where your gaps are, bring in professionals if need be. I'm already speaking to my point 6 and I'll go back to the others, because point 6 says recognize when to ask for help. We have a challenge in HR sometimes where we're so burdened with tactical daily duties and we forget when we are just not competent or skilled enough to execute certain things. There will be times where you need to bring a health and safety professional in, howbeit short term, if your company cannot afford one full time, to address issues and update policies you may have existing. Consistent sensitization on safety is important. You are an authority, you have been empowered by management. So the next thing for you to do is to consistently sensitize people. I believe many of our HR professionals are doing that this COVID-19 period. Are you checking for updates? Are you spreading this information? Are you making sure that people are not overloading themselves with information? Are you expressing the dangers should they do that? And of course, I'd like to speak to work-life integration, which is a continuous conversation in HR sectors. How do we achieve that integration? I believe balance is a charade. I think it doesn't exist, but I think integration is possible, where there is an admittance that this person is my employee, he works for me, I pay for his time, but I also respect the fact that he has responsibilities and a life outside of work that I should honor and that he has to honor. That consistent need to give people room. If they need to work flexi hours to get by a challenge in their life, then you are mindful. So yes, this I think are some of the roles, aside what Jennifer has emphasized, that HR can play in ensuring compliance to health and safety related issues. I could move on now. I think I'm basically wrapping up at this point. Okay, so what are the things I would like to sum this document into? 4 points actually. I said, first of all, is that the era that thinking provision of a safe and healthy environment for a work or a business is expensive. That era has passed. Being health and safety compliant is everything. It is nothing. The cost of doing that is nothing compared to what you lose as an organization if you do not have best practice health and safety policies in place. And to number 2, I hope that we have some management representatives or CEOs or business owners here today speaking to how HR should be empowered. And why is this the case here? Because we know that sometimes HR wears this cap as well, where there are no HSC officers. It now becomes the responsibility of management to empower the HR professional to be able to educate, to be able to recommend a consultant where necessary, sensitize the people, and create policies that become long-lasting, safety policies for the organization, and amendments can be made where necessary. Management keep checking in and monitoring that there is compliance and that money put towards this is being put to good use. When you see a drop in sick leave, when you see happier employees, nothing is more priceless than that, I believe, for any healthy management. And of course, it's HR's responsibility to educate employees on health and safety hazards and to watch out for conditions that pose a danger. So yes, that consistent need to educate, I have emphasized already. And my final point as I wrap up right now will be that while we recognize what constitutes and communicate it, what safety is, it's important that we emphasize that it is everyone's responsibility. And if you forget anything else I said, please don't forget this one. Health and safety in the workplace is everyone's responsibility. While the HR person may be the face who is championing it, that's fine. But it is your responsibility as much as it is mine. Because when you look out for yourself and the other person does that and the next, then we are all the better for it. I think it's been exciting, and I look forward to more conversations around this. Thank you very much for having me.
Wow, thank you so much, Toyin. Thank you. That was so interesting. You know, the funny thing is you forget how things are, especially when you're not in it. You really, really forget how things are in the country. So thank you so much for bringing that to light. Thank you. That was interesting. So I'll quickly go over the comments and just share 1 or 2 thoughts. And then, of course, Fumi will handle the Q&A session. Okay, so the comments, there is one by John here. He says here, Toyin has made a very relevant points about the challenges to health and safety in Nigeria. when you see large organizations claiming many hundreds of days without a lost time incident, you know they are disregarding incidents or they're probably lying. Ooh, I'm not sure how that true is, but that's a very valid thought. Yeah. And then we've seen some people asking questions about the slides. We will email them to you. Okay. So thank you. Hand over to Fumi now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honestly, this has been amazing. And you know, you don't really see how fast time is going as well, because we're having so much fun. But yes, Toyin, you made so much points that, again, I've written down, and I feel like it's worth just kind of like, you know, summarizing before we go into Q&A about the significance or the impact having low educational level employees in the workforce, how that can also impact, you know, health and safety, and of course the interlink between HR, HSC and HR with regards to that. So we need to ensure that people are, you know, our organizations are communication friendly, correct? So taking into consideration the different educational level of people. Some people may be computer literate. Even the cleaner in an organization needs to have an insight to health and safety management at their level. So sometimes we find a cleaner that may not be eloquent or be conversant, or their English level is not as the same as obviously somebody in management, but it's important that there's no discrimination at any point. Health and safety must be communicated and cascaded right through the organization. So I thought that was really, really good. You know, of course, you mentioned about, you know, the policies, you know, that you stumbled across the updated national policy for occupational health and safety, which, to be honest, that also links with your area of who's monitoring what, isn't it? You know, we can have policies, we can have all sort of things in place, but do we know about it? And even if we know about it, is it being implemented? And how do we ensure, how do we, you know, monitor that that is actually being effective and there's no breach at all? You know, I will touch on some, you know, touch on that a little bit later, because I know that I work personally very closely with Lagos State Safety Commission, which is the arm of the government that's responsible for managing health and safety of Lagosians, you know, in terms of occupational health and safety. So I'm happy to touch on, but it's a good one that we may look at bringing, you know, the regulatory body in for our next session, so that way, you know, that bringing people from the Ministry of Justice, those that enforce, you know, enforce the rules and the laws, those who are developing those laws, and those that are enforcing it as well. It may be a good platform to bring them on and get them to say what they're doing and how they're ensuring things being done on their end. Like I said, there's so many things. So we have questions. One is from, we have Dapo Molade, who said, HR and OSH, where is the link? I think that's a good question. I think, to be honest, our speakers have done justice to that question. But please, just for the benefit of that attendee, if we can just have maybe Jennifer or Toyin, whichever one of you is happy to quickly just touch quickly on, you know, HR and OSH, where is the link?
Okay, I can speak a little bit and just have Tony say her part as well, because we may have two different perspectives. So for me, like I explained through my talk, it's that HR and H&S, health and safety, are both concerned with people. So our business in an organization company is the people. As HR are employee champions and are there to ensure compliance and all the legalities are met, we have to work together, because health and safety have got different policies and different processes. We are there to ensure these are applied. We are there to listen to employees, because when employees have issues, you find most times they're not comfortable going straight to their managers. They'll always, you know, pop up to HR to make a complaint. So where an employee raises a concern about their health and safety, HR has a duty to look into that. Not that we run in and be the rescuers. We need to liaise with the health and safety people to understand what they're doing and why this employee feels that something's not being done right. And this is a connection. We're the employee champions, as I explained. We are communicators. We communicate employers' business, make sure nobody's left out the link. As Fumi said, you know, we influence decisions where we feel, yes, this is detrimental to an employee, because at the end of the day, we are there to protect the terms and conditions of employment for an employee. Terms and conditions also consist of a safe working environment, and that is why that sits in HR to have a part in that.
Thank you. Tonya, did you want to add to that, or do you think Jennifer's done justice so that we can go through the other Q&As?
Yeah, please go.
Okay. So, I mean, just an addendum to what Jennifer has said, to be fair, I think the common denominator here for both HR and OSH is the people, okay? So there's a duty of care on both parties. So I think that is the the immediate link. There is a common denominator. The employees, the employees within the organization is the link to both of them. We've got one that says, can you please give us an example, or can you give us examples of how employers engage their employees? I think this might be for Toyin. Someone talked about, was it Toyin or Jennifer who mentioned in their slides about engaging employees?
We both did.
I'll give it to Toyin.
Yes. Toyin, go on.
Okay, so the question again, please.
Can engage the employees.
Okay, I'm assuming that engagement in this case is specific to health and safety. So because there are many ways. So I think a good place will be to have, for instance, in my organization, we have retreats, and at retreats we actually engage. Sometimes questionnaires are sent on satisfaction and wellness, checking in that you're happy. And so we use that data to deduce where we are and what we can do differently. So there are different levels of engagement. You could use questionnaires, you could use direct, you could use blind feedbacks, whatever, but make sure that that communication is open and is consistent.
Thank you very much. We've got so much hands coming up as well. I think just to add on to what Toyin has said, and I don't think it's very much common in Nigeria, it is here in the United Kingdom where we have something called the Health and Safety Committee. So if you have a committee in an organization, you have a representative of different parts of the organization who would meet regularly. And of course, they are more or less the voices of each department. And of course, there is also somebody from top management who would help to drive it from top right through as well, just to add on to what Toyin has said. So we have, so we definitely promote, tell that person who asked that question about, engaging employee, have set up a health and safety committee, and that way there's a dialogue, across the organization. We have one question from Oluwatoyin Lawal, who said, in an organization that does not have a health and safety department in place, what areas should HR consider to ensure health and safety ensure health and safety in such environment? I think that would probably be having a committee as well. HR, of course, cannot be everywhere, but if we have representatives who are in different parts of the organization who meet regularly, discuss health and safety, present it, and of course that filters to top management as well, that could promote such an environment. Kofi Saggio, in the oil industry, HR is not responsible for HSC, okay? The overall owner is the CEO or MD. Need better understanding, will like to further discuss this issue. I don't know if that's what is said, but maybe to simplify things, Kofi, you can, the HSC, health and safety, even in any sector, whether top management can delegate responsibility, but they cannot delegate accountability. So I would want to believe that you do have professionals, health and safety. In the oil and gas sector, you have your HS people who they're responsible for the operational side of things. And yes, you're right, the MD CEO is ultimately accountable. Yes, so I hope that sort of touches on what you were trying to ask there. Indonjesit Obot, right. How do you reconcile between risks and hazards at our workplace? Okay, question for Toyin. We'll come back to Indonjesit. Okay. Question for Toyin says, what is in your view on flexible working in Nigeria?
My view, I think, is healthy. I think if properly monitored, it is healthy for work-life integration. However, there are cases of abuse. But look where we are right now. Are we not working from home? And have we crashed? No. So many organizations are going to leave this experience of the COVID stay-at-home period and reevaluate their thoughts and concerns around flexible work hours. I think it's healthy, properly monitored and implemented with technology at play, of course.
Thank you. Thank you. I've got another one. To be honest, we are very time conscious here. We don't do no any time zone. We don't do no Nigerian time or any time UK time. We just stick to time. Whatever the time is, it is. So we would try and end for bang on. No lateness. We don't start late, we don't end late. So please, if we don't answer your question, we may develop a FQA, from your questions, and then respond back to it when we feed back to you, or when we send out the slides to people. So we've got Reneos Kayode, who said, how do we close the communication gap between HR and the workers, which seems to be the reality in most organizations? So many of HR policies are not as straightforward as has been exposed today. Yeah, exposed today, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Who wants to take that?
So those are realities. You can't even capture all the challenges, but that person is talking from their reality, and that just speaks to some of the things, the conversations we need to have, both as HR professionals, as health and safety experts, sitting in a room and thinking, what can we do differently? In Nigeria, there are a lot of concerns. There are HR people who don't communicate enough. And so that was why Jennifer and I spoke to communication repeatedly. Communication is very pivotal. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Toyin. David, I think it's just a comment you made there. Thank you very much for that, your question has already been touched on in terms of, in this pandemic situation, what areas does the HR need to support on? And I think Toyin mentioned that briefly, this work from home by default, that's how HR is helping in one way. Bumi Jasmine Omeke said, implementation of good health and safety policies, as I personally observed, is majorly dependent on the CEOs or boards' receptance to good health and safety practices. This, I believe, is a major challenge where they are reluctant for the HSE officer or HR in implementing good policies. Can we suggest practical ways to address this?
Practical ways is to continue to talk about it. Where I work, data matters a lot. So you don't just approach management and say, I feel like. It's not about your feelings, no matter how strong you feel. So I think HR needs to get to the point where you are partnering with the business, you give data for data, you give facts to your feelings. So when you put data at play, who is doing it, why are they doing it, how successful is it, how can we do it with minimal cost and still do it right? When you interpret it in that way to any reasonable management, they'll buy into it. So how you interpret the conversation to management is very critical. And it's an art, you can learn it, it's not a big deal.
Thank you very much. I think another one came on from the chat room that says a question on how do you go about HR that is unapproachable, as they often feel they know it all? Jennifer, do you want to help with this?
That's fine. I saw that question and it made me laugh, because that is something you hear quite often, that HR is unapproachable. I think until you try to speak to somebody, you can't make a judgment. So unless you have, I'm going to say this, sorry for my fellow HR professional, unless you have really crappy HR people, we are to listen. We are listeners, because we cannot support or encourage or influence what we don't know. So if there's a problem, I would say feel confident to speak to your HR people. If you feel they're not listening, then you can move that forward to possibly the person who's overseeing the HR department, because the primary role for HR there is to ensure, that the voices of the employees are heard. We are the employee champions. So for us being unapproachable, we hear that a lot, but as I say, it's a case of you've spoken to somebody in HR and you feel you've not got the answer from them, then you can escalate that through the right channels. Where you say HR because they feel they know it all, in the UK context, it's, we have our HR is governed by employment law. Like somebody was talking about the CEO, and we made it quite clear that accountability sits with your MDs and your CEOs, but they cannot do it all. So they get specialists, people who are qualified in certain areas to look after certain areas. So HR don't know it all. They just know their stuff, what they need to do to make it a safer, better workplace. Question them, try your HR people. If you get somebody who thinks they know it all, go and do a little bit of HR research, try them and see, then you'd know if you have a fraud or somebody who understands what HR practice is. Okay,
we may just have room for one more question, and I'm going to throw this out to Toyin. Do you think that having an individual managing multidisciplinary role, HSC, HR and admin, is effective? I mean, considering in Nigeria, like you rightly said in your presentation, you have an individual who's got to wear different caps, for so many reasons. So quickly, Toyin, because we have just one more.
Do I think is effective? I can't speak for everyone, but I think that is the reality. So effective, I'll play diplomacy here, because effective has to have a context. So, however, is the reality because of cost. because the organization runs by spending money, and so probably they can't afford it. However, can we introduce the use of consultants and experts where we need them? Yes, by all means. And I think that is what I'm pushing for more, as against recruiting someone full-time for each of these roles. Maybe not as effective as it should be, because one person can't just wear all the caps, but that is the reality, and we can make the best out of it.
I mean, looking at it from that, I guess that's the environment that we're in Nigeria. We've got to make do with that, and that's where Toyin's coming from. Jennifer, what say you in terms of looking at the UK context?
Say that again, sorry. What was the question?
I said, it's the same question, but we're trying to look at it from the UK context. Of course, that's in Nigeria. Toyin's looked at it from the realities of being in Nigeria.
If disciplinary is going on, if health and safety could play a role in that.
Yeah, is it effective? I'm going to read the question very quickly again. Is how effective, or do you think that having an individual managing multidisciplinary roles is effective? So one person being the HSC, the HR, and admin all together, all wrapped in one.
For me, I would say it depends on the size of the company and the person who's doing that. So if it's an SME, then you're not going to go and have a health and safety, and because it's cost is money cost. You're there to make money. So if it's a small business, yes, when that business starts getting bigger, you're going to need particular specialists. So if it's small, you're starting up, you'd have somebody, but you just ensure they have a rough idea of the statutory requirements for all those roles they're taking on. So you need to ensure you're getting competent people to do the roles. So it's about the competence of that person.
Thank you so much. Honestly, it's been an amazing time. I'm so conscious about time. Jennifer, Amarade, we are grateful. I'm sure we're going to have you on another time. Toyin, Seth, thank you so much. I'm sure you will be coming back again, because the questions in the Q&A is flooding. We even have it going through our chat boxes as well. So please, if we haven't answered your question, be rest assured that we will probably build up a Q&A, an FQA from this, and try to address all the things that you've mentioned and circulate that out to everyone who's registered. To my co-host, my girl, IK, yeah. Thank you very much for being on here. Do you have anything else to say?
Well, no, nothing. Time is, fast spent. But thank you guys so much. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you, Toyin. And of course, we've got a lot of questions. We will answer them. Sorry. And of course, you will get the slides. People have been asking. They keep asking and asking. But thank you, guys. Thank you.
Go to our YouTube. Make sure you go to the YouTube. You subscribe to our YouTube channel, and so put on your notification, and so you can hear from us weekly. It's a weekly affair. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. So see you guys next week. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.